What up, Falcons Nation? Rise up, Nation. It's your boy, Jazzy Jeff. Real talk, no gimmicks, bringing that real Falcons talk to real Falcons fans. And if you're new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button for future content. Today we are going to get into the number 2 wide receiver position over the years for the Atlanta Falcons during their best years, which means we're getting into Michael Jenkins, Roddy White, Mohamed Sanu, and Calvin Ridley. Since the buzz around Calvin Ridley this year is that he can get 1,000 yards, I wanted to see the impact over the years on the wide receiver position for the Falcons at that number 2 spot. In 2008, which was Matt Ryan's rookie year, the Falcons went 11-5 and won the wild card. Michael Jenkins was our wide receiver number 2 behind Roddy White. In that year, he only recorded 30 receptions, 777 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's because the Falcons back then were a run-heavy team and a ball-control dominant team, played a lot of solid defense. Michael Turner, the burner, had 376 rushes, 1,699 yards, and 17 touchdowns. Michael Jenkins wasn't needed that much just as a possession receiver. In 2010, the Falcons went 13-3, were first place in the NFC South, and lost the divisional round to the Green Bay Packers. Roddy White was still the number 1, and Michael Jenkins recorded 41 receptions, 505 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Back then, this was the emergence of Tony Gonzalez, who recorded 70 receptions, 656 yards, and 6 touchdowns as our number 2 option. So even though Michael Jenkins was the number 2 wide receiver, he was 3rd in the pecking order of the offense. Michael Turner was still a workhorse, rushing for 334 rushes, 1,371 yards, and 12 touchdowns. It's funny how nowadays Falcons fans expect the number 2 wide receiver on the team to just get a whole bunch of production, yards, and touchdowns, whereas back in the day, he wasn't relied upon to do any of that at all. He was just a solid possession receiver, because back then we relied on the run, which I wish we can get back to, because the run is what wins games in the fourth quarter. Now, 2011 is interesting for the Atlanta Falcons because that's when we drafted Julio Jones. Roddy White became the wide receiver number 2, but he still finished with more yards and receptions than Julio Jones. Roddy White had 100 receptions, 1,296 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Back then, Michael Turner was still getting 301 rushes and 1,300 yards with 11 touchdowns, but every single year you saw a decline in Michael Turner's yards and production due to his health and the emergence of Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, and the passing game of the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons clinched the wild card at 10-6, and in 2012, the Falcons finished 13-3, got to the NFC Championship game. Obviously, Roddy White was still the number 2 wide receiver, but his catches slowly started to go down because Julio Jones was emerging. Roddy White had 92 catches, 1,351 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Michael Turner saw another dip in his rushes and yards and touchdowns, totaling up 222 rushes, 800 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Between 2011 and 2012, that is when Roddy White started to slow down in his production, and to me, his skills diminished slightly, and that's when Julio Jones started to break out. After the 2012 season, Falcons fans started to see a decline in Roddy White's physical health. He no longer showed the ability to be able to separate from defenders, and his speed started to diminish. His last season with the Falcons was 2015, and that's when in the offseason of 2016, the Falcons signed Mohamed Sanu from the Cincinnati Bengals for 5 years, $32.5 million. His first season with the Falcons, Mohamed Sanu finished with 59 catches, 653 yards, and 4 touchdowns. The Falcons went to the Super Bowl this year, finishing with 11-5 and lost in the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots. Devontae Freeman was the running back now with 227 rushes, 1,079 yards, and 11 touchdowns. The Falcons slowly got away from the run and became a fully fledged passing team. Now, there was some success with these years, obviously getting to the Super Bowl, but record-wise, Falcons were no longer able to capture the 13-3 type records that we succeeded in the past. Also, the running production dipped, and that is when the Falcons started to struggle closing out games, along with a defense that started to diminish as well. Without a defense and a run game, the emphasis was on Matt Ryan to get it done, mostly with just offense alone. In 2018, with the first round pick, the Atlanta Falcons drafted stud wide receiver out of Alabama, Calvin Ridley. This was a signal to Mohamed Sanu that his days in Atlanta was numbered. Calvin Ridley started only 5 games, but played all 16 games his rookie year. He caught 64 balls, 821 yards, and scored 10 touchdowns. This was the start to show that Calvin Ridley could hang in the NFL, and it seemed that he had more breakaway speed than Mohamed Sanu. He ran better routes than Mohamed Sanu, and it made Mohamed Sanu expendable. That's why in the 2019 offseason, after Week 7, the Atlanta Falcons traded Mohamed Sanu to the New England Patriots for a steal second-rounder. Mohamed Sanu went on to get injured with the Patriots, and he seemed to lose all separation and had struggled in the Patriots system. In 2019, Calvin Ridley started 10 games for the Atlanta Falcons, but he only finished with a total of 13 games played due to the fact that he got an abdominal injury in Week 14 and was ruled out the rest of the season. The positive note is that he still finished with 63 receptions, 866 yards, and 7 touchdowns. There's no doubt that if he played the remaining of the games, he would have eclipsed his rookie year in yards, catches, and touchdowns. Calvin Ridley is definitely a solid number 2 wide receiver, and he has the potential to play like a number 1 wide receiver. The things I noticed about him, though, are that sometimes he drops the ball in traffic, and he is sometimes inconsistent. There's games where he will blow up for 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns in a game, and then there's some games where he doesn't seem like a factor at all, or he makes mental mistakes. In the offseason, Calvin really looked like he bulked up, and he's been working really hard in the offseason, and he says he can be an elite receiver, and he expects 1,000 yards. Julio Jones also says he expects 1,000 yards for Calvin Ridley. I think this is very possible in the Falcons system, including the addition of Todd Gurley. Calvin Ridley just needs to stay healthy, stay consistent, and put it together. Well, there you have it, Falcons Nation, the evolution of the wide receiver 2 or Z position. Throughout the years of the Falcons' success, it was interesting to see how it started with the old reliable Michael Jenkins possession receiver, then Roddy White becoming the Z with the presence of Julio Jones, to Mohamed Sanu, then Calvin Ridley. It will be interesting to see in the future when Julio Jones retires if Calvin can fill that role as the number 1 wide receiver X position, or if he will remain as the Falcons' reliable number 2 receiver. Let me know in the comments section below if you think Calvin Ridley will remain a wide receiver 2 for his whole career, or do you think he will reemerge as the number 1 and we will draft another receiver underneath him. Please subscribe to my channel and help it grow. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers. Comment, like, share, and as always, Falcons Nation, we rise up. Peace, y'all.